So this week I had a very interesting experience. I went for a walk in the morning, and I live in Kenilworth, a part of Cape Town, which is it's a nice area, and it's quite affluent, and some lovely big houses and so on and so forth. And I went for a walk, and I passed by this property, and I know of it. In fact, I've been onto it before, and a friend of mine actually rented a property on the property, and something just made me go inside. And the gate was open, the main gate was open. So I walked into this quad, this majestic kind of quad gravel around this island, kind of square island with beautiful trees, and it was just utterly majestic and kind of very early Cape Dutch. And I just felt like ducking in there. And then the moment I ducked in there, I felt quite self-conscious and like, okay, now I'm officially trespassing. And there were workers and gardeners and stuff, and I just said to myself, just keep walking, and if anyone stops me, I can just say, oh, sorry, I got the wrong way, I don't know how I came here, or I could make up some quick excuse. But I just noticed the experience as I went becoming increasingly uncomfortable for a whole host of reasons. One of them was that I was trespassing, and I thought someone could turn really nasty. They could, I don't know, people get funny with property, right? It's mine, get off. And what was also interesting was a number of the staff that I walked past. No one questioned me. No one asked, excuse me, can I help you? Or what are you doing here? And I put that down to the fact that here in South Africa, with our legacy of race, our history of race, I put it down to the fact that I was white and can just go where I want. And I deliberately exuded an air of confidence. Sorry, I've just noticed I've been burping. I've had a beer. It's a Friday afternoon. And I walked on, and then I came across this gate, and I opened this gate to this garden, and it was just utterly majestic. I mean, I'm not going to post the pictures here just because because I just don't want this to come back and bite me. But I opened this gate, and this quite extraordinary scene of beautiful, absolutely manicured gardens with a maze and a beautiful pruned bushes, just impeccable. It was a gorgeous day. I could hear the doves and the birds in the background. I carried on walking, and then I found myself in the gardens, and I looked around, and I saw this just extraordinary, exquisite, beautiful old Cape Dutch house, and the light was just catching it in the morning, and I carried on walking, and I followed a path, and I found myself in this little kind of enclave it felt like the Garden of Eden. It was just breathtaking. I sat down, and I was just noticing all the different but the feelings of emotion and trespassing. So interesting that I can do this as a white person. What would happen if I was a black person? And eventually I went back, and I found myself back in the same quad. Took pictures as I went. I was conscious of probably security cameras and so on and so forth. I tried to get out, and then the beam wouldn't let me out, so I kind of thought, all right, so I'll just wait for someone to come in, and then I'll just scoot on out. And they didn't, and I waited, and then I asked one of the gardening staff, could you just let me out? And I shouted to one of the other people, yep, pressed the button in the kitchen, and the gate opened, and off I went. But it was such a visceral experience. Visceral meaning feeling it in the organs. And I thought a couple of things occurred to me. One was the gaping gap between rich and poor, and the majesty of this particular property. I didn't think it was that big, and it just seemed to go on and on and on. How I could, as a white person, just wander through and no one would stop me. And also just how we live in such a divided country, such a country of more accurately, such a country of contrasts. And then of course the final part was around land. Like I happen to know this particular property was owned or founded or started by one of the first settlers, the Dutch settlers here. And where do we go? How can this be? How can we live in such a world of separation and inequality? And I love the fact that people can build wealth and they can do what they want to do, but why so much? And why at the cost and expense that some people don't have anything and they're dying of hunger, on the other extreme. And wow, I mean, I'm a white person. I come from pretty reasonable privilege. I class myself, I suppose, as kind of middle class. But I've been to castles and palaces of friends, and so I've been fortunate to have this kind of experience. But I was just left with more questions and answers. And how can we write things? How can we make them not 100% better, but 10% better or 50% better? Sorry, 5% better. So yeah, it was a really powerful experience. And one of the ideas that I had is the only way we're going to get an understanding or a sensation or a feeling of what it's like for me as a white person to get a feeling of what it's like to be a black person is to be a black person. And and vice versa. How does a black person know what it's like to be a white person? To be a white person. So I have an idea forming that I'm percolating and thinking about is to have people have that experience. So wait out and see what I got to say next. But I just thought I'd share that with you. I did also share it with my around the table with my family, and I was conscious of breaking the law, but I was also conscious of wanting to consciously share the story and why I was doing it. Thanks.